Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm Uma Hiremet, the friendly librarian at Stonehill, and I am absolutely delighted to have this wonderful set of authors, publishers, editors, all the way from across the pond. Talk about delightful. I can tell you, I heaved a sigh of relief when I saw Sam's face over there, because I wasn't quite sure how this was happening. So I'm really, really delighted to have you here. Adam, you are going to be introducing everyone. I know we have royalty over here. I was looking at this and I was trying to practice the laureate Nanog. We have two laureate Nanogs over here. We have a young adult book of the year, right, Deirdre? We have a long listed for the Man Booker Prize, right, Sam? Royalty. I mean, it's Ireland. When I got that call saying we'd like to come over and present at Stonehill and we're from Dublin, I said, oh, James Joyce, Bram Stoker. I mean, just the May Vinci. I mean, the names just keep coming up in your head, and you say, it's the land where, yes, not just books make waves. They've been making waves, which is the little island byline, right? Books making waves for centuries. So I'm going to pass this on to Adam. So delete that instantly from television. It's Kevin, and I should remember that because I have two son-in-laws. All right, Kevin, it's all yours, and you're going to be introducing everybody.
Yeah,
and
I'll pass the mic down, and I'll come back and have a question for each.
Excellent. All right, enjoy everyone, and there you go.
Thank you very much, Uma. It's a pleasure for all of us to be here, all of the folks here from Ireland. I live in Cambridge, though I lived for many years in Ireland and have a long association with Little Ireland. I'm now a director on the board of directors with the company, and I'm really pleased to be able to introduce you to these wonderful authors. Stonehill College has a long history of association with Ireland. I went to college in University College Dublin back in the 1970s, and there were two fellow students in my English program who were from Stonehill, and they became friends. And I know that ever since then, there's been a lot of back and forth between Stonehill and various Irish universities. So it's a pleasure to be part of that tradition as well. I've introduced myself. I'm going to pass the mic on to Matthew Parkinson.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Uma. It's a real privilege and pleasure to be here. My name is Matthew Parkinson Bennett. I'm a publisher with Little Island Books. Little Island is a small Irish independent publisher of books for young readers, children and teens and young adults. We're supported by the Arts Council of Ireland, and we're here on our first tour of the US in Boston and New York this week, supported by the generosity of Culture Ireland, which is an organisation which funds and supports Irish artistic activities internationally. And we're here to bring four of Ireland's leading authors for young people to bookstores, universities, and to do various other speaking events and spread the word about Irish writing for young people in the United States. I'm now going to pass over to Siobhan Parkinson.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here, and thank you for having us. My name is Siobhan Parkinson, and he's Matthew Parkinson Bennett. Parkinson is not a coincidence, but I won't say any more about that.
We're not married.
So,
Follow that.
I will say no more. So I set the company up about 12, 13 years ago in a very modest way. I didn't really mean to do it, it sort of happened. And suddenly I found myself running a small independent publishing company. I won't go into all the details about why I ended up doing that, but it just sort of happened by itself, more or less. It was fate. And after many years of running the company myself, I eventually passed it over to Matthew, who's doing a fantastic job, I have to say. We have these amazing authors. So when I say I kind of stumbled upon becoming a publisher, it was partly because I was already an author. So I have been writing for children and young people since the early 1990s. And Uma was mentioning this expression, laureate Nanog, which is I suppose it's an honorary position, Tricia, I call it. Yeah, it's an honor that is granted to a children's writer or a young person's writer every 2-3 years in Ireland. And you become the laureate for a period of time. And I was the first one of those back in 2010, from 2010 to 2012. So I'm not a laureate Nanog, I'm an ex-laureate Nanog. And I like, when I'm feeling swanky, I call myself laureate Emerita. So that's me, that's my story. So I'm now going to pass you over to Trish, who is the current laureate Nanog.
My name is Patricia Ford. I'm from Galway in the west of Ireland. I write for children and young people. I write everything from picture books to older middle grade books. As Siobhan said, I'm currently laureate Nanog, and I will be until 2006. No. 2026. See, I can't do maths. I did say this at the very beginning. 2026 is what I meant. So it's absolutely lovely to be here. And without further ado, I shall hand you over to the wonderful Deirdre Sullivan.
Hi, it's really lovely to be here. I'm Deirdre Sullivan. I'm also from Galway, and I write largely for the older end of YA young adult fiction. I have a special interest in the stories of women and in retelling old stories, like kind of from their perspectives, from unheard perspectives. I also I write picture books too, and I have some stuff for grown-ups. But yeah, it's mainly young adults. So I'll pass on to Sam now.
Hi, I'm Sam Thompson, and shockingly, in the context of this discussion, I'm actually English, as you can probably tell from hearing me speak. But I live in Belfast, and I've lived in Ireland for a lot of my life, actually, in Dublin sometimes, and now in Belfast. I am a writer. I've written some books for children, which have been published by Little Island, probably the best publishing experience I've ever had. And I also write books for grown-ups, and I teach writing at Queen's University in Belfast as well.
So I'm going to start with Sam and work back. Yes. Right? Okay. So Sam very modestly did not tell you that one of his books for adults was longlisted for the Booker Prize a number of years ago. So he's a very distinguished author, as Deirdre and Trish and Siobhan herself are as well. And Sam, I'd like to begin by asking you, because you write for both adults and young people successfully, so well for both, what's the difference between the two for you? I forgot.
So what's the difference between writing for kids and writing for adults? I think I was just thinking about this actually, and in a way I always wanted to say there is no difference. That there's that the work is exactly the same, and that whatever you're writing, it's all the aim is always the same. It's that you're trying to find the simplest, clearest way to tell the story you have to tell, and to tell it in the most truthful way you can, and that it makes no difference who you're writing it for. But I also think in some ways I'm most proud of the children's books I've written, and I feel that I had to write a few books for grown-ups before I had learned how to be honest enough and to know it and purposeful enough to know what I wanted to write about, and had to say, to be able to write it in the form that it had to be in for the children's books. In some ways it feels to me as though there's more at stake in children's books, and it also feels to me as though it feels like a slightly more serious enterprise in some ways, if that makes sense. That when you're writing books for adults, when I am anyway, there's something very essentially playful about it. That you're when it comes down to it, you're only ever writing to please yourself. You have to write for yourself as the first reader, and you write to please yourself, and then you hope that you as the reader of the work will sort of stand in for the readers who you hope might come to it later. And all of that's still true when you're writing for children, and I think the playfulness is still there, but also there's something else going on, which is that you know that you're writing for somebody else as well, and that somebody else might be children that you know, it might actually be yourself as a child, and that's been my experience actually. Writing fiction for children has brought, in some ways made me kind of more, given me certain kinds of connection with myself when I was 10 years old or whatever. And so that, in a way, I think the relationship with the reader that you imagine in your mind gets a little bit more kind of complex, and you start to feel that it's not just you, it's somebody else, and so you start to you become aware of the responsibilities you have towards them, or the feelings you have towards them, or the things you want to tell them, and so I think that relationship with the reader you imagine is especially rich to me when writing for children. That's my sense of it.
Well, thank you. That's a really good answer. And I know when we were coming up in the car, you were talking about how your own children think that they've written your books. So. But they very kindly allowed Sam to put his name on the cover. So
we did have to have a discussion about that. But yeah, I talked him into it.
So thank you, Sam. So Deirdre, one thing that I've noticed is quite similar among the three of you is that you write stories that are not exactly alternate universes necessarily, but are very different from the day-to-day world that we live in, one way or another. And I think that's interesting. And I know you like to focus, Deirdre, on retellings of classic fairy tales, Irish mythic stories, and so forth. What is it about these old stories that you find grabs you, and what do you think pushes you to want to reinterpret them and bring them into our own time?
I think old stories, and particularly stories that endure, they teach us a lot about the human experience. They teach us a lot about our commonality, how much we share. But they also teach us a lot about the structures that oppress us, because the stories that get amplified, that get tweaked, it says as much about the teller and the time that they grew in as the tale itself. And I find that really interesting. When I always loved fairy tales, myths as a child, and you fall into it when you're a child and you don't necessarily question. And then as you grow, you find Virginia Woolf has a quote that I'm about to butcher, so forgive me, but it's about returning to the bookshelf, and every time you return you find the book altered, but it's not the book, it's you, obviously. But that's what draws me to old stories and retellings and myth, and the ones that I interpret are always ones that I have an emotional connection to, because I write to seek an emotional truth and to give that to the reader. That's what I want, that's what I get out of it. And if I can't do that, then why would I bother?
And your most recent book, Savage Her Reply, is based on an Irish mythic story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually, it's my most recent book in that it's just coming out in the US, but I've written 3 since. But yeah, it is. It's a retelling of an old Irish myth called The Children of Lear, about a woman called Aoife, well, in my version. So there's a chieftain called Lear, and he marries a woman, and he has 4 children with her. And she dies, so he marries her sister. And her sister wants to be loved, but she's not the same as the widow or the wife that he lost, his late wife. She can never be that. And so she kind of becomes jealous of his children, of the love that he has for them. And ultimately she turns them into swans. And the legend goes on. She's punished, she's turned into a demon of the air, and that's kind of where her story stops in the traditional telling of it. But I wanted to look at her because there was one particular passage in it that kind of fascinated me about how, like, as she became more jealous, as she became less herself, like, you know, she grew uglier and she went to bed for a year. And like, to me, that felt very like depression. And I wanted to know why. I mean, why would you perform an act of cruelty on a child? What would drive someone to that? And I wanted to look at what she'd done clearly and not to alter it, and not for it to be a story about how, you know, but it was actually a bad man who came in and did it and she was good all along. You know, I wanted her to look clearly and cleanly at what she had done and to live with that and to carry it, and then see if we could get to a place of forgiveness, you know.
And it's quite a remarkable book, and I'm sure everybody will look forward to reading it. But I should also say that, you know, there are many ways in which you can be distinguished, but I think one way is if your books are on the Harvard English curriculum, and Deirdre's Tango Brian is. So that's a nice way of acknowledging the quality of what you do. So Trish, the first couple of books I think you did for Little Island were Mother Tongue and Wordsmith. And in both of those books, they seem to me to be fascinated with words and with language. And of course, you're a native Irish speaker as well, and I know that Irish is important to you. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit, if you would, about the relationship between those two languages for you personally, and how that informs your own writing and the books that you've done. Because I know you've done a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, as Kevin said, I grew up speaking both languages, so I spoke Irish and English from when I was a child. As I grew older, I realised that we were losing an awful lot of words in Irish. From when, even in my lifetime, words were disappearing. And what happens, I think, with a minority language is, it doesn't happen overnight, but gradually the big language eats the small language, bite by bite. So we start losing words all over the place. Maybe words that are seen as too modern for the language sometimes. Though you'd be surprised, like one of the words that was disappeared very early where I live was the word for bicycle, which in Irish is ruher, which has to do with the word ruh, meaning a wheel, so ruher. But that word is long gone. That word is gone in common usage, I'd say, for 30 years nearly now. People will use the word bicycle in the middle of a sentence. So it's very hard to know why some words disappear. Interestingly, when the Wordsmith was published in America as the list, the kind of subtitle line they put on it was, "How many words do you need to survive?" And it was really funny because that's what I was thinking about. How many words will we need before our language is gone? And linguists say that if nobody is speaking to a baby in your language today, your language is dead. And it's an awful thought that could happen. And where I live, I'm kind of in a bubble because I have friends who are speaking to their baby in Irish today, but lots of parts of Ireland that isn't true anymore and hasn't been true for a long time. So when I was writing the Wordsmith is set in the future after global warming. And it says that there is only this one group of people left. And they live on the top of a mountain in a place called Ark. And in Ark, art is forbidden, music is forbidden. And the language of Ark is a list of 500 words. And they're the only words you're allowed to use. And as I always say to the children when I'm talking to them about it, I say, if you use a word that isn't in the list, you get thrown into the forest to be eaten by the wolves, which is their favourite part of the whole thing. So yes. So it was very much in my mind when I was writing the words. But that's not true either, because when I'm writing a story, none of those things are really in my mind. They've been in my mind at some point before I wrote the book. I'm just writing the story. Afterwards, you kind of see what the themes are and what you were maybe trying to say. In mother tongue, it was interesting. Where I live, we had just had a huge scandal about babies born to unmarried mothers, and these women had been locked up in these institutions, and we had just found out that a place near where I live called Tuam had discovered kind of a mass grave of these babies. And again, I didn't set out to write a book about that, but it came into it. As I was writing the book, babies were big in it, and babies who had been deprived of language. I had read somewhere in my research that if a baby doesn't hear language in the first 2 years or so, they will never speak if they don't hear any language. So in my book, Where Language is the Enemy, I had that set up where these babies were taken and were deprived of hearing language. But I do find it interesting, and I think we all kind of think this, you know, you don't set out to write these things, but all that soup of things that are happening in your own life end up in the book some way or another. So I hope, Kevin, that answers. Thank you.
That's a lovely answer, Trish. Thanks very much. And I think all three of the guest authors, I mean, I would say that they have a lot in common, but one thing that I love that they have in common is their love of words and language and their respect for it, and the fact that I think, you know, to your point, Sam, children won't hesitate to tell you what they think. You know, adults may say, "Oh, your book is great," even if it isn't. Kids won't do that. You know, it's like comedians: you either laugh or you don't. And kids know, and they respect the craft, I think, of all your books. But the name Siobhan Parkinson is kind of synonymous in Ireland with children's literature, because Siobhan was the first children's laureate. She is one of the most recognized authors and has won all sorts of awards. Founded Little Island Publishing, which has become, I think, the premier publisher of children's literature in Ireland, if not more broadly. And continues to be kind of an inspiration to all of us that would like to follow in her footsteps. And Siobhan, you said that when you introduced yourself that you started writing in the early 1990s. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what drove you or brought you to start writing for children, and then what happened that made you continue to do so.
Thank you. That's a rather unexpected question, Kevin. But I will answer it honestly. It's not an easy answer, but in 1991, I had a stillborn baby, and my son Matthew was 5, 6 at the time, and we knew the baby wasn't going to survive birth. So it wasn't that it happened in the hospital, or well, it did happen in the hospital, but we knew it was going to happen. And so I had to try and prepare this little boy for the fact that his much longed for sibling wasn't actually going to be coming home with me from the hospital. So I went around bookshops and I was looking for a book about babies dying, which is not exactly, bestseller kind of material. And of course I was 7 months pregnant at the time, and people were just horrified when I said I wanted a book like this. And they offered me books about hamsters dying, and they offered me books about grandparents dying, which of course, and these are real griefs that small children often do have to deal with. But this kind of grief was taboo. You weren't really supposed to tell children about this. And it is a terribly, terribly difficult thing to do, to tell a child that another child might die, a small child, a baby. When you explain death to small children, you frame it saying that, well, as people get older, their bodies get tired and they get ill, and eventually they just kind of lie down and they don't wake up again. You put it in that kind of, I don't mean euphemistic way, but you do explain it in the actual, that is the actual truth of the thing. That's what happens, people's bodies wear out and then they die. But you can't say that about a baby dying. So I had to try and explain this to my child without that framework of it's a natural event and it's the way things are supposed to be. So I couldn't find, there wasn't a book available, so I thought I'm going to have to write it myself. So I did write it myself. And while at the time, so it's just a very truthful account of what actually happened in our family. And it was published by another publishing company in Dublin. I mean, when I say another one, Little Island Dogs didn't exist at the time. I was published by the O'Brien Press in Dublin. And when the baby was buried, we went to a nursery garden to get bulbs to put on the grave. And the particular day we went, they only had yellow tulips and yellow crocuses and daffodils. They didn't have any other colours, only everything was just yellow. So I said to my husband, well, we just take the yellow ones out, that's what we have. And so when my husband came back to the car and told Matthew, we've got the bulbs for the grave, but everything, they're all yellow. And Matthew said, and when will the flowers bloom? And my husband said, in the spring. And he said, it still brings tears to my eyes, he said, so it'll be all shining in the spring. And that is the title of the book, All Shining in the Spring. So that's how I fell into writing for children. I wrote my first book for my own child. And as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it. I'd written the book that I needed to write. It was an important book for me, it was an important book for my family. But that was the impetus for it, and that impetus was now gone, and there was no need for me ever to write for children again. But Michael O'Brien of O'Brien Press in Dublin had other ideas, so he called me in and he said, you're a children's writer. And I said, not at all, I'm just writing for children's writer. I said, I like writing, yeah. Children? Me? No. And he said, yes, you are. So he asked me to write another book, and he threw a few ideas at me. And within 3 or 4 years, I had written 3 or 4 books, and I was well on my way to being a children's writer. And in fact, I published 12 books with the O'Brien Press over the years, and I went on to work also with other publishers. So that's how it started. And you can be sentimental about it, and you can say that, you know, that out of tragedy comes joy, and comes success, and comes a whole career, and a whole way of living in the world. And it sounds sentimental to say that, but actually, in this case, it really is true. And in my more sentimental moments, I do think that baby came with a gift. And this is the gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Sorry for putting you on the spot there. That was lovely. And Matthew, you're no longer 5 years old. And you, excuse me, you kind of assumed the mantle of this company. And if I say so myself, done a brilliant job at not just maintaining, you know, the quality and the impetus that Siobhan started, but also in bringing your own stamp to the imprint, to bringing a new perspective, to opening up Little Island to a more diverse range of voices, backgrounds, and kind of really bringing it into the 21st century, it seems to me, while all at the same time making sure that the commitment to the quality of every book that you produce continues to be there. And that's not an easy thing to do, and I think you've done it really well. Not to mention, you're running the company. And all of the things that go into running a small business in a tough, small market are very challenging as well, and you're doing a great job. But maybe talk a little bit about your vision for Little Island in the present and where you'd like to see it go from here.
Thanks, Kevin. Big question. Well, we want to publish the best new writing for young readers, predominantly Irish writers. We publish for all ages. We publish picture books, middle grade to older YA. And Ireland has this great tradition that everybody knows about, and that the state makes a lot of, exploits a lot for its international reputation and for tourism and so on of great Irish writers like Yeats and Joyce and Swift and Stoker and so on. It's the writing for young readers is less known in Ireland, and I feel that one thing that we are doing, and also with our international work, like being here, publishing in Britain, we sell rights internationally for translation around the world, is trying to fly the flag really for Irish children's writing, and seeking, hoping to see Irish children's writing recognized on a par with the writing that's so well known for adults. And I think we are a bit unusual in Irish publishing. Publishing in Ireland is kind of a very small industry, small market and so on. But we're kind of unusual among Irish publishers for the extent to which we're internationally oriented. And I think that's something that's been part of my vision for the company from the start, is that Ireland is a small market, but it's always going to be our first market, our primary market, and our first readers are always going to be in Ireland, but that we want to take Irish children's writing out to the world. I say that we're rooted in Ireland, but we're facing outwards. And so coming here today is part of that process, and launching our books, launching publishing in America last year has been part of that process. So I'd like to see Little Island be a serious international player in publishing for young readers, while also, I hope, remaining, the leading Irish leading children's writer, leading children's publisher in Ireland. There's one of the reasons that publishing in Ireland is small and is kind of kept small is that Irish writers will often start off with an Irish publisher and then move on to a bigger British publisher once they're established, for very good reason. The money is better, the commercial possibilities are better. But I would like to see more Irish publishers, whether for children or adults, being able to retain Irish writers, because I think Irish publishers can be better positioned to support Irish writers within their home market, so to speak, in Ireland. But in order for Irish authors to feel that they can continue publishing with Irish publishers kind of need to raise their game. We will never be able to pay the kind of fees, kind of advances that HarperCollins and Penguin and the big international players can, but if we can demonstrate that we are able to do things like that our authors win major prizes or get on the shortlist of major prizes, which happens and has happened several times this year, and are able to be sold in the United States and in Britain and in translation around the world and so on, then we will make Little Island and feel like more of a home that Irish children's writers want to be part of. And I hope that will also lift Irish publishing generally, so that the industry as a whole is able to retain more Irish authors in publishing within the Irish children's world. The Irish publishing world.
I just want to add something just by way of definition, really. There has been in the Irish children's literature world since the beginning, which started probably in the late 1980s and flourished in the 1990s and is continuing to flourish. There has always been a kind of unspoken rule, which is that the word Irish children's writer means anybody who lives in Ireland and writes for children, whether they're Irish by birth or passport or anything else, as long as they are Irish in one way or another and have a loyalty to Ireland, that is an Irish children's writer for us.
And Irish writers living abroad.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Matthew. And I would add that another thing that I think Matthew's been helping to drive is the diversity of the titles. Ireland is a very different country from what it was decades ago, much more diverse, lots of new and different voices, and they're well represented in the Little Island catalog and in the Little Island acquisition strategy, which is a good thing. Well, I'm sure some of you have questions, so kind of open up the floor and allow anybody to ask any of our authors or publishers a question today.
Can you just talk about where people can get copies of the book?
Our sales rep Chris is in the audience, and people can acquire copies of the books, your local bookstore. So we really launched our publishing in the United States last year with a consortium who are a sales and distribution company here, yeah, for the first time, really, our books are widely available in North America. If your local bookstore doesn't have our books, I'm sure they'll be happy to order them in, and they can obviously be found online through the usual online retailers as well.
Do you have a flyer with you? Or we can leave it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the two closest bookstores where the books are available are An Unlikely Story in Plainville and Books on the Square in Providence. Those are the two geographically closest, but any of the Barnes and Nobles within the metropolitan area can order the book for you.
And since this morning, they're signed.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're worth more on eBay, so.
Yeah, so I walked into the bookshop this morning and I went up to a shelf and I put my hand out and I pulled a book out at random and it's one of ours.
Really?
The Lonely Book.
Nice.
It'll never happen again, don't worry.
I should also add too that the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have already reviewed at least four books.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to get some of the attention of these major media outlets, which we were very hopeful will help drive sales as well.
To put in context our size, we say we're small independent. In addition to myself, we have one full-time employee and one part-time employee. So it's really a completely tiny operation. But the nice thing with publishing nowadays, and with the power of the internet and so on, is that you can really have 2.5 people in an office in Dublin and the books available at Belmont Books in Boston. It's really cool to be able to make that happen. But
Also, I mean, the frame of the conversation here is obviously Irish literature and its place in the world, but even more broadly, the books are impactful and are being well received because they're just exceptional books. I mean, these are much broader themes. They're not geographically or culturally bound. They're great stories told very professionally and widely available. And I think that's why, in spite of their relative youth in the market, they're doing very, very well.
thanks, Chris.
That's why he works for us.
And yeah, as part of what I was saying about being internationally oriented, that requires that our books are not parochial. A lot of our books are set in Ireland. They have a strong Irish flavour in the language, in the themes, in the characters, and so on. But they're great books. They're not great Irish books. They're great books.
Yes.
For the three authors that are here, could you give me some idea of the age range? The three books that are on the handout here, are they for middle school ages or? And also, you mentioned you were heading to Boston and New York. I was wondering if you were going to be in Brooklyn at some point, and if so, where?
They're staying in Brooklyn.
Oh, this.
This has information about our tour. If you scan the Q, there's a QR code on that which gives you information about all our events.
So in terms of ages, I write picture books. I've written two with Little Island. And then my other books, The Wordsmith and my latest book, The Girl Who Fell to Earth, are sort of 10 plus, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Middle grade.
Yeah, middle grade. I'd say younger middle, or sorry, older middle grade, younger YA.
Tween.
And tweens, yes, tweens, that's right.
With Savage Earth, I would definitely say 14 plus. You know, kind of I deal with several themes like directly, and you know, you just want to be like, if a younger kid was to read it, I'd want their parent to read it first so they could actually talk about it, you know. But yeah, and my picture books are forthcoming, so yeah.
And Wolf's Tongue and the Fox's Tower, I think of as being sort of age 8 to 12, would you say? Kind of mid, which I think is middle grade as well. I think it was middle grade fantasy adventures. By the way, one of the things that I really like about writing for this age group is that I think you can write about incredibly knotty, difficult ideas as long as you find a way to completely transform, completely embody those ideas as an adventure. That's all. Yeah, if you can do that, then you can talk about absolutely anything.
Yeah. Also, on Sam's point, one of the big revolutions in American book retailing is that there are no longer separate sections for YA and adult fiction. They're often shelved and marketed together. And that's because people read right across the spectrum. And that children's literature, specifically young adult literature, has within the last decade really revolutionized a lot of the topics that were considered forbidden. That there are much more adult themes being discussed in young adult literature than there are in traditional mainstream literature. And eating disorders, bullying, self-destructive behaviors, these are all being discussed in traditional YA literature much earlier than they were in traditional mainstream. So if you go into Barnes & Noble now, those are continuous sections. There's no expectation within the ownership and the bookselling community that there needs to be a distinction. I mean, you as a parent may wish to preview this, discuss this, and decide if the vocabulary is appropriate, or to discuss this with your child, but from the point of view of booksellers, it's on the continuum.
I always say young adult literature is far too adult for me at this point.
I think children's and YA literature here and in Ireland is really at the cutting edge of the culture in a lot of ways, and often things pop up first in books for young readers. The first stage of digestion almost of a topic may come through children's literature. For example, Trish mentioned how her book Mother Tongue, which is called The Last Lie in the US, deals with this major scandal in the news in Ireland of this mass grave of babies. I'm not aware that that's really been, maybe it has been since, but I would say it was certainly the first work of fiction published by an Irish writer to really kind of tackle that scandal. We're just about to publish in Ireland, and it's coming out in April here next year, this book, Black and Irish Legends, Trailblazers and Everyday Heroes. This is the first book to explore and celebrate Black Irish identity, which is quite a recent identity in the sense that immigration into Ireland really took off in a major way in the 1990s. And so we're now having the first generation in a major, large-scale way, first generation of Black kids who were born in Ireland, coming into adulthood and making their impact on society. And it feels fitting that it's a book for young readers that is the first to go there and to explore this, because kids are already living in tomorrow. They're already ahead of everybody else, and it makes a lot of sense that it's writing for young readers that gets to things first. And also it's arguably there that is the strongest need for the readers to have these things explored and discussed in literature.
I'm just thinking that a lot of the time when you write middle grade particularly, you write about issues, but they're disguised. So it allows parents and teachers, I think, to come at it whatever way they want. So for example, Matthew was talking about Mother Tongue, the Last Lie. I never confront the Tune Babies Scandal head on in the book. I talk about what happens when vulnerable mothers and children are silenced, and I dedicate the book to the Tune Babies. But I think that allows parents, particularly with younger middle grade, to decide where they want to go into that topic. So in my latest book, there's a lot about that a person comes from another planet and says that that the world was only, that Earth was only invented 1,000 years ago, and that everything you know about your history and your archaeology, this planet gave it to you. And what it does is, though I never again say it directly in the book, but now when I talk to children, we inevitably end up talking about where do you get your information from. And I say to children, well, how do you know there were dinosaurs? And they say, well, I read a book. I said, well, do you know the person who wrote the book? And they're like, well, they're dead. So I think with middle grade, and that's a great joy in some ways of writing for middle grade, is that you can talk about anything, though you might have to disguise it a bit. But it opens doors for adults to lead a conversation with children at whatever level they think is appropriate. You know, they don't have to go at it head first.
I think our publishing, our list is quite diverse, lots of different types of books. We've always been kind of quite a broad church in the way we think about publishing. But if I had to define a Little Island book, or like what's the typical Little Island book, what are the qualities of the Little Island book, I think I would say that a lot of the best books at the core of our list are books which explore philosophical or thoughtful or kind of quite cognitively complex ideas through story, and often through a page-turning, thrilling story. And I think if you can marry great writing, really challenging and interesting, knotty ideas, and plot, that makes for a brilliant a book that children will really respond to.
We have to say goodbye to Deirdre now, who's heading off for another event. The rest of us will be staying here for a few minutes, and happy to mingle with you and answer any questions you have, or to do any other follow-up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deirdre. Thank you, Deirdre.
Hello, everyone. I'm Uma Hiremat. I was the friendly librarian at the Ames Free Library for the last 15 years, and then I had this wonderful retirement, and then I went insane at home, and I've come to the Stonehill Library, where I continue to be the friendly librarian for Easton. And really, since I'm straddling both worlds, I really want all of you to come for the wonderful, wonderful events that take place in this academic institution that is yours. I mean, you can come in and some of them, let me give you a taste of it. We just finished up a nice program with our authors from across the pond in Ireland, which was a lot of fun.
I'm Matthew Parkinson Bennett. I'm the publisher with Little Island Books. We're a small, very small, independent Irish publisher of books for young readers, from toddlers up to older teens. We've been on the go for about 13 years in Ireland, selling into the UK and internationally, and just last year we launched in the United States. So we're incredibly excited to be branching into this terrific new market.
Hello, so I'm Siobhan Parkinson and I'm from Dublin in Ireland. And I am a writer mostly for children and young people. And I'm also an editor. And I was, until quite recently, a publisher. I founded Little Island Books, which is a specialist children and young people's publishing house. It's a very tiny, very vibrant, and very effective, I suppose I might say, small children's publishing company in Ireland. And I'm so glad to be here at this university, which has such connections to Ireland. I feel that Ireland is kind of moving out beyond itself in recent years and in recent decades. And it's so lovely to be part of that and to be bringing Irish literature to the United States, to Irish people in the United States, people who have connections to Ireland, but also to the world, to people of all kinds of backgrounds and ethnicities. To be bringing our story to you is such a privilege, and I'm delighted to have been here and to have been talking to the people here today.
My name is Patricia Ford. I live in Galway in the west of Ireland, and I write for children and young people. So I write everything from picture books to middle grade novels. And it's absolutely fantastic to be here in the United States talking about Irish children's literature. As you know, we have a long history as storytellers, so it's fantastic to be able to go out into the world and celebrate that. So my latest book, The Girl Who Fell to Earth, is out now, and it's speculative fiction about what might happen in the future. One of the hardest things about writing it was trying to keep ahead of the future. I kept inventing things for the book and then finding they've already invented it. But it's the story of a girl who comes from another planet and experiences Earth. And even though she's been brought up to believe that we humans are irresponsible, we're destroying our own planet, she makes a friend and she changes her mind about all of that.
Hi, I'm Sam Thompson. I'm a writer from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I'm here visiting Stonehill College with some fellow writers and publishers from Dublin publisher Little Island Books. I am the author of 2 books for children called Wolf's Tongue and The Fox's Tower. These are middle grade fantasy adventure stories about children who discover that there is a hidden secret world where animals speak to us. This place is called the Forest. And what they discover in these books is that there is a conflict going on between the foxes and the wolves. The foxes are clever, articulate creatures who can persuade all the other animals to do what they want to do with their words, whereas the wolves can't use language very well, and they've been manipulated into being the slaves of the foxes. So in Wolf's Tongue and The Fox's Tower, Silas and Willow, the children, they have to help the wolves to escape from the tyranny of the foxes. And these are books about how we tell stories about other animals and about the kinds of stories that human beings tell about the natural world. And I think they're also books about how the children who are young now, who are reading and starting to grow up now, are going to have to find whole new stories to tell about the way that human beings relate to the non-human world.
The US is a country that I think really takes children's books very seriously. There's a great culture here of appreciating and enjoying writing for young people, and we're so excited to be able to bring the best of Irish writing for young people into the US. Being a very small company, coming into a very large new market here in the US is challenging, but it's also a lot of fun. And so we're here at the moment in Boston, and we'll be in New York later in the week doing a series of speaking events and with several authors and trying to raise the Little Island name around the East Coast of the United States. Being small, we don't have the kind of marketing budgets of bigger publishers. And so we're just going step by step, trying to incrementally grow awareness of Little Island and great Irish children's writers, book by book and season by season. And it's been a lot of fun, and we're really excited to see where Little Island Books for young readers can go in the US.
Please go to the stonehill.edu website and you can get a list of all the events that take place. I know a lot of you are familiar with what happens at the Martin Institute in Stonehill, but there's a lot more happening around campus. And Stonehill has been part of Easton for the last 75 years. So it's about time you came and wandered its beautiful grounds and listened to its professors. I hope to see you here. Bye-bye.